Hey Cake Chums, and welcome back to another video. Well, not just another video, episode 2 of the Great British Bakealong. Yes, I'm carrying along my baking adventures alongside the bakers in the tent of the Great British Bake Off, and this week they were facing the challenges of Biscuit Week. If you missed last week's video, basically every week during the Great British Bake Off, I bake along with the bakers in the tent, having a go at one of the challenges that they were set by the judges Paul Hollywood and Prue Leith. In a first for this year's Great British Bake Along, I am allowing you guys to choose the challenges. So before I let you know what it was you chose, let's recap what they were. For this week's Biscuit Week signature, the bakers were tasked with creating a batch of signature Florentines. In the technical challenge, they were asked to produce 2 different types of macaroon, not to be confused with a macaron. This is the traditional coconutty, cakey biscuit, and the bakers had to produce one that was filled with chocolate and one that had a topping of mango curd, I think it was. And then finally, in their showstopper challenge, the bakers had to recreate, now I want to say it was a meal, like a memorable meal or a memorable afternoon tea. They had to create some sort of sculpture of like food related stuff using biscuits. I'll be honest, I kind of tuned out by that point. I think I was Googling something. But anyway, yes, they had to make a sculpture of various things out of biscuits. Now, much as I would love to have a go at creating a biscuit sculpture, and I mean that genuinely, it has been a bit of a week. So obviously I was at school, on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. On Thursday I did another episode of the Kenwood Kids Club, which I can link in the video description if you'd like to check it out. On Friday I was decorating a cake for my godson's birthday, and I can put a picture of that up on the screen if you're interested. It was quite simple, but he's only having a small get together because of course the restrictions because of like COVID-19 coronavirus. But he wanted Minecraft, so he got a simple Minecraft cake. And then of course today we are filming our Bakealong video, and incidentally it's Saturday today. Tomorrow I'm shooting a magazine tutorial, so it really has been a bit of a week. But anyway, so because I didn't have time to do a biscuit sculpture, the 2 options that I gave you this week were the signature challenge, which was the Florentines, or the technical challenge, which was the macaroons. And I'll pop up the results on the screen now. On this side, I will eventually learn, on this side, and you can see that the kind of runaway winner this week was the Florentines. Now I can't remember if I've made Florentines before. I don't think I have, but I definitely don't have a signature Florentine recipe. Unlike last week with the Battenberg, of course I had made them before, so I felt a bit more confident in kind of adapting what I already knew to create my own version. I think because this is the first time I'll have ever made Florentines, I'm going to play it safe and have a go at Delia Smith's Florentine recipe. I do love a Delia Smith recipe. She tends to be quite dependable. I use her Christmas cake recipe for all my Christmas cakes, so let's hope that I can rely on her Florentine recipe just as much. But anyway, the rules of the challenge were as follows. The bakers had to produce 36 chocolate Florentines, which had to be uniform in shape, texture and flavour. They had to feature the perfect snap, which meant that when you break them, they snap. And they had to be dipped, decorated or coated with chocolate. The bakers were given 2 hours to complete their challenge, which means of course today I will also have 2 hours to create my batch of Delia Smith's Florentines. And Delia's recipe should produce about 20, so I've doubled all of the quantities in the hope that that will give me enough to make 40, but at least the 36 that I need for the challenge. Now this isn't the first time that we've seen Florentines on the Great British Bake Off. If you cast your mind way back to Series 5, which was the year that Nancy won, in Biscuit Week there they were given a technical challenge, which was Mary Berry's Florentines. And oddly there was no mention of the snap, but what was really important and what they were looking for was a lacy appearance. So a lot of the bakers in this series' challenge used molds or like muffin tin type things to make their Florentines, and It got a lot of people talking on Twitter actually during the episode as to whether or not that was cheating. But based on that and based on what was said on the previous Bake Off challenge, we're not going to be using a mould today. We are going to go for that kind of lacy appearance. I'm not sure how I'll get uniformity like that, but in fact so much was made of that lacy appearance during season 5 that Aweso actually got sent home for trimming off all his lacy edges with a cookie cutter, which he did to try and get them to look more uniform. Anyway, so yes, in today's video we are going to be creating 36 Delia Smith-ish Florentines, and yeah, let's get to the video. Okay, so we're getting straight into things today, and as I say, we are using a recipe from Delia Smith, and I will link the exact recipe that I'm using down in the video description. I'm going to be that really annoying person who makes somebody's recipe but then makes like substitutions and changes, and then in all likelihood complains if it doesn't work. I'm sure all the people watching who have put recipes out there before will know exactly what I'm talking about. You always see them in the comments. This recipe didn't work for me, all I did was change this, and this. Unfortunately that's going to be me, because Delia's recipe calls for butter, golden caster sugar, plain flour, double cream, and then it talked about whole almonds cut into slivers and then flaked almonds. And I figured, is that not the same thing? So I've just doubled up on the quantities of flaked almonds because I really didn't want to have to cut almonds into thin slivers, so that could be wrong, but yeah. It also called for candied peel, and I couldn't get hold of any candied peel, and I really didn't want to make any candied peel, so instead I have just bought normal peel that's already chopped, and instead I have just washed all the syrup off and hoped that that will work almost as well. Who knows? Glacé cherries, and I've washed the syrup off those as well, just because if we're aiming for a snap we want these to be quite dry. We don't want to be putting too many extra liquids in. And then the recipe also called for angelica, and if you're not sure what angelica is, it's basically kind of a herbal root that you can get candied, but it's a bit of a specialist ingredient these days. It used to be used an awful lot kind of back in the good old days, but these days you don't really see it used much anymore, and you definitely can't buy it in your local supermarket. So I debated ordering some online, and then I just thought, do you know what, I'll leave it out. And then while I was in the supermarket today, I spied the candied ginger, which is nothing like angelica. In fact, angelica's quite like juniper in terms of flavour, but I figured I really like ginger, and I'm going to use that instead. So yeah, quite a few changes. And then the last thing that we need is dark chocolate for the chocolate coating on the bottoms. Delia's recipe, we're getting started straight away by the way, there is no kind of like build up or anything. Delia's recipe says start, shh. By the way, this is the only pan I have that will register on my portable hob here. So I might have to run off partway through this video and wash the pan because we need to use it again. Anyway, Delia's recipe says to start by putting the butter into the pan together with the sugar, and the flour, and then to stir it over a very low heat. Is that very low? It is now. Until the mixture has melted. So I'm going to do that first. Can I just put it out there by the way, that I really wanted to have a go at macaroons because I've never made them before and I love macaroons. But I'm not bitter at all. And to be fair, this kind of feels like a technical challenge because I have never made them before. Really hot already. feel like I should have melted the butter first. It seems like it would make more sense. Never mind. I'm going to take my hoodie off, I'm really hot. There we go, hoodie off, apron on, now we feel much more professional. So you guys can't really see what's happening in the pan, but basically the butter has like started to melt and then almost like absorb some of the dry ingredients, and so what I have is basically some big lumps and then sugar. So we'll just keep stirring. It does say keep stirring. So presumably we're waiting for the sugar to melt as well. By the way, while this is doing this, I have to give a big shout out to my colleague Hilary from school, who, as soon as my Battenberg cake recipe went up last week, she raced out and bought the ingredients and had a go, and substituted the mint for orange, so did the chocolate orange version. She brought a slice in to me at school, and I have to say it was absolutely delicious. So if you're not a fan of mint chocolate but still fancy giving that a go, then why not try a chocolate orange Battenberg cake? And I promise I will get the recipe up on my website soon. As I say, it's been a very busy week. Okay, I feel really silly just stirring this. So presumably what we're trying to achieve here is kind of a caramel, but with the addition of flour, which will give us kind of that biscuity element, and then essentially everything else that we've got here just gets added in to this mix and then allowed to cool down before we make it into Florentines. The other big challenge of this is going to be the chocolate, because normally you would temper the chocolate for Florentines, but I can't find my digital thermometer, so I'm gonna have to make an executive decision as to whether we just don't bother tempering, we give it a go and see what happens. You know, I'm not convinced this is ever actually going to melt, guys, because with the flour in there, it's just crummy. I'm going to put the cream in, and because I'm starting to become worried that basically what I've created is just a giant sugary crumb. So I'm going to go rogue and start combining the cream. I assume that was right. Going to check. Obviously it wasn't exactly what it says, because it says to melt it. Gradually add the cream, stirring to keep it smooth. I'm not convinced. Okay, no, I stand corrected. It's coming. It's becoming something. Yeah, I would say perhaps ignore the recipe where it says and wait for it to melt, and in fact don't. Just wait until you can't see kind of any lumps of butter anymore. And then go straight in with the cream, because this definitely looks more like a something, possibly with some lumps in, but this is definitely much more like a normal Bakealong video. No idea what I'm doing. This could be terrible. Last week felt far too controlled. There's definitely lumps in here. Not many lumps, mind, but I can see lumps. Hopefully they'll be hidden when we add the other stuff. Gradually add the cream, stirring continuously to keep it smooth, other than the lumps that are already in it. And then add everything else essentially. So, whoops, almonds, random ginger, peel, cherries. Don't miss those because they are one of my favourite things, and I might have already eaten all the leftovers, so if this goes wrong, I don't have any spares. That's it. So if I had used the Angelica, there would be green, because Angelica is green, which would add kind of a nice contrast to this, because it is very beige. So if I can show you. Can you see that? Add it would have made a lot of sense to move these out the way. Brought this more over. But anyway, there is what it looks like. I mean, it's thick, it's sticky, I guess. That's what we're after. And then the recipe says to remove the saucepan from the heat and put the mixture to one side to cool. Turn you off before you start shouting at me. And then, yeah, that's basically it. It says leave to cool before the baking part happens, so what do we do now? I don't particularly want to get the chocolate ready yet because we'll be using that after we've baked the Florentines and cooled them. So it would make more sense to do the chocolate once we've baked all the Florentines and while they're cooling. So what I might do is decant this into a bowl and weigh it so that I can then divide that number. What are you focusing on? There we go. Yeah, what I might do is decant this into a bowl and then weigh it so I can see what I need to divide it into to make 40 equal portions. And then because for the challenge I need 36, I can essentially have 4 spares for quality control or potential disaster concealment. But yeah, so let's do that. Let's decant this into a bowl, weigh it, and then see where we are. Okay, so £697 grams, which works out to 17.4 grams per Florentine. So we're going to leave this to cool to one side. Whoops, sorry. I'm going to go and wash this up ready for doing the chocolate later, and then I think I'm just going to wait for those to be cool enough that I can touch them, and then we need to press on with the next stage. In the meantime, I am preheating my oven to 170 170 degrees fan, and I have lined my 2 largest baking sheets with greaseproof paper. Delia does recommend using non-stick, that stuff, which is called non-stick liners, which I do have, but I literally have no idea where I've put them. So we are just going with greaseproof paper, and we're going to hope that that will be okay. And I'm hoping that I can get away with doing as many as 10 at a time on these 2 trays, because otherwise we're going to spend the entirety of this video baking, which isn't very entertaining for you guys because you can't even see the oven. Okay, so it's saying on here each batch will take about 10 to 12 minutes to bake. We've got an hour and 40 minutes left-ish, I think slightly over that. So we've been going for just under 20 minutes. So if we say we've got 2 lots to go in the oven, so that's 12, 20, about half an hour, say, worth of baking time. Then the chocolate. I reckon we can probably give this another good 10 to 15 minutes to cool, and then we will carry on. So yeah, in the meantime, I'm going to do a bit of washing up, and hopefully then it will be time to carry on. So I'll see you guys shortly. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes and we're just over 35 minutes into the challenge now. My pan is washed and ready for me to melt my chocolate on it in a little while. So that's there. And this, I guess it's cool enough to touch on the top at least. We'll find out as I get down inside. And I guess it's time to start portioning it out. Gonna try and MacGyver together something. Thinking if I put this on the scales, because the bottom is small enough that I can still see the dial, and then put this on top, essentially I should then be able to weigh each individual Florentine. So if you remember, we're looking for about 17 grams for each one. So we'll pop that there. That is 20. So I'm going to take a bit off That's 16. Oh my word, I'm going to be here for hours. That's 17. Okay, so if we're going for 17 and a half, we'll say as long as it's 17 or 18, we'll go with it. I honestly don't think I'm going to fit as many on here as I think I will, as I think I want to. And here you go, this is where we're going to spend the rest of that 2 hours, is me just weighing out individual Florentines. Okay, so obviously I have no idea how much these are going to spread, which is why I'm very reluctant to kind of go too ham on how many I put on this sheet. I think if I budge them along slightly, I can probably do 2 more, but I don't think I'm going to do 10. I think I might stick with 8. So that'll be 5 batches at 12 minutes each. So that's pretty much, what, an hour? Just of baking. Tremendous. Okay, so that is 8 at around about 17 grams each. And if I swap that, we'll do exactly the same thing again. Okay, so there is our first 2 batches. So that's 16 of the 36 that we actually need. So I'm going to pop these in the oven for 10 to 12 minutes, and then we will see how they came out before we have a go at our next lot. Okay, so these were in for 12 minutes, and do you remember that whole discussion we had around uniformity? I don't think they'd be very impressed. Yeah. I'm going to leave these to cool slightly, and what I'm going to do is cut some more greaseproof. I was hoping that I could use the same greaseproof, but I'm not going to. I'm going to cut some more. I did also notice that the recipe said to push them flat with the back of a spoon before you put them in the oven, which I didn't do, and then very quickly tried to do as soon as they'd gone in the oven, and that didn't end well because they ended up just sticking to the spoon. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, because I don't want these to kind of distort or anything, I'm going to put them on a cooling rack on the greaseproof in the hope that that will prevent them kind of curling or bending over on the cooling rack. And then I guess we do exactly the same thing again. I'm going to try and push them down with my fingers because, as you can see, they're really sticky, and if I try and do it with a spoon, it's just going to go and stick on the spoon, so maybe this will help.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Okay, so that batch is out, and I have to say I'm a little bit happier with them than I was with the first batch, although there's still absolutely no uniformity to them at all. The final batch has just gone in, which is just 1 tray's worth, and that will give me 40 Florentines in total. And so now it's time to melt the chocolate. Quick time check, we are currently 1 hour and 28 minutes into the challenge. That means we have got just under half an hour to go. So it's going to be tight. And next, of course, we need to do our chocolate. So I need 350 grams of chocolate according to Delia. So I'm just going to weigh that out. I mean, it should be fairly easy because these are 100 gram bars. And you guys watched me do this last week, so I'm not going to make you watch me break up chocolate again. So in fact, let's do some very snazzy editing and just go Okay, so what I've done, well actually in the interim while you haven't been here, the last batch have come out of the oven. I've decanted these guys onto cooling racks without the greaseproof paper, and I've melted 2/3 of the chocolate over a pan of simmering water until it was completely melted. And now what I'm going to do, this is kind of like a very amateurish version of tempering chocolate, by the way, if you don't have a thermometer. So yeah, I've melted 2/3 of it down completely over a double boiler, and then I've taken it off the heat, and I'm now going to add the final third of the chocolate and allow that to melt just in the heat of the chocolate that's already melted, and that will help to bring it down to temperature. Because basically when you're tempering chocolate, you want to take it up to, I can't even remember what temperature, and then you want to cool it back down to another temperature that I can't remember. It's all on Google, but anyway, and that helps the chocolate to form a certain type of crystal structure that means that when it sets, it will give you that really lovely shine and that really lovely snap. Now I can't guarantee that this will work. I'm normally very much I've got Google open on my phone for the temperatures, and I've got the thermometer to check what I'm doing. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I can tell you now already that there's no uniformity. I think some of them are undercooked. Not one to blame the recipe, but I know that Delia tests her recipes in a normal non-fan oven and then says if you're using a fan oven, reduce the oven temperature by 20 degrees. Personally, I think that 170 was too low, so, well, for that bake time at least. I did have an oven thermometer in, so I wonder if maybe they could have done with a slightly higher temperature, but never mind. As I say, this challenge does feel very like a technical for me, just because I've never made these before. Kind of not really got any idea what I'm doing. Very much relying on those baker's instincts that seem to have evaded me today. Oh, and a time check. We have got 17 minutes to go. So 17 minutes to basically cover all of my Florentines with chocolate and do the pattern on the bottom with the fork. They're full of holes, so I can tell you now the chocolate is going to go absolutely everywhere, but never mind. Okay, what I'm going to do is just allow some of this chocolate to go up the side of the bowl, and if it's tempered successfully, this chocolate should start to set, although the bowl is still very warm. It's going to be fine, it'll all be fine. Okay, how best to do this? I think what we will do is we'll get some more greaseproof. Put that there. Get another cooling rack. Yes, I have zillions of these. Pop that there, and then that there. And then what I'll do is I'll basically spoon some chocolate onto the bottom of each Florentine, spread it with the spoon, put it on there, and then once it's had a couple of seconds to start to set, then I'll do the fork pattern. I've just popped some of the chocolate onto a little piece of greaseproof in the hope we'll be able to see if it's tempered. I've never done this before, I just see them doing it on all the cooking shows. Maybe give everything 5 minutes? 5 minutes, which will give us 15 minutes to put all the chocolate on. No, it won't. It will give us 10 minutes. 10 minutes to put all the chocolate on. Okay, 5 minutes. I'll sit and read the recipe again for 5 minutes. Okay, so chocolate updates. This chocolate is not remotely tempered at all. So, yay! And we now have 11 minutes because I was generous with myself and quickly realised that chocolate wasn't going to work, to smear very melty, non-tempered chocolate all over the bottom of our substandard Florentines. And then, yeah, This is gonna be so messy. As I say, there are tons and tons of holes in my Florentines, so this could get very messy. We're just going to pop chocolate on them. Do I need to go right to the edge? No, because we don't have time. Sometimes during these Bakealong challenges, I ask myself why I put myself through this. Answers on a postcard, please. There's holes. I think this would be a lot easier if, even if your chocolate wasn't tempered, if you allowed it to set, not set, but you know what I mean, like cool down more than I have, because this is still very liquid. That one's actually bending, so I can't imagine that's got much of a snap. But this whole tray seems to be softer than the others. But this was a second shelf jobby. Do you remember that time earlier when I said I'm not going to start on the chocolate yet because, yeah, I think that may have been a mistake. 1 minute! Okay, I'm out of time. We're not going to notice me finish the shoddy job of doing whatever this is called. So there we go. That was Florentines. And I've done 40, so that's surely worth some bonus points. Well, first of all, we can take out the ones that I've broken. That probably leaves us with about 36. Anyway, I'm gonna have a bit of a clean up and then we'll have a sit down, we'll have a look at these and we'll see how I actually got on. So, see you in a bit. Oh dear. Well, while I was cleaning up the chocolate that was everywhere, literally, I rewatched this week's episode of Bake Off, specifically that first signature challenge where the bakers were all making their own Florentines, and I noticed that a lot of them used a technique where they dipped it and then scraped off the excess chocolate with a palette knife, which would have been infinitely easier than what I tried to do. So yeah, lesson learned. Maybe rewatch the episode of Bake Off before we start the challenge, because I think that would have made life a lot easier and there wouldn't still be chocolate all over the floor. But anyway, guys, here are my 36, I ate the broken ones, my 36 Florentines. Yeah, just here they are, just look. There they are. So the baker's challenge was that they had to make 36, which I did. They had to be uniform. I think they're possibly the least uniform thing I've ever made in my entire life. They also have to be uniform in texture and flavour, so perhaps we'll dig into a couple in a second. They had to have the perfect snap. The chocolate, by the way, is completely not tempered to the point that it is melting as soon as I touch it. It's like anti-tempered. Let's see if we have a snap. No. Pretty much no. Might try another one. Are there any that are actually brown? Let's try this one. Yeah, no, so there's no snap. There were snaps when I was breaking them when I was putting chocolate on, but never mind. They have to be dipped, decorated or coated in chocolate. Well, there's chocolate on them, so I guess that counts. And yeah, so there you go guys, that was my attempt at baking Florentines. Quite possibly the worst result I've ever had in a bake-off video, but never mind, I've learned something new. I've learned that I can't temper chocolate without my thermometer. I've learned that I should put the chocolate on by dipping and scraping. And I've learned that if you're going to make Florentines for the first time, don't do it on YouTube. maybe have a practice or two first. So lots of lessons learned this week. I don't even know what next week is. I've already forgotten what they said at the end of this week's episode. So I'll be going into Tuesday with no expectations at all. If you guys already know what the challenges are, feel free to comment them down below. And feel free to comment and tell me what you think of my first attempt at Florentines. Having rewatched the challenge again, I think I definitely would have been somewhere near the bottom of the pack, but they still taste good. That tastes really good actually, particularly the ones that are cooked all the way through. I do hope you enjoyed this week's video anyway, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up down below. And if you're not already subscribed to Mr. Baker's Cakes here on YouTube, you can do that right now by hitting the big red button down there on the right. If you ring the bell, you'll also get a notification every time I upload a new video, which I usually do on Sundays, incidentally, and often they're a lot more successful than this week's video. But I did say right at the start that I would upload the results regardless of how well they came out. So again, yeah, there we are. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now because I have to scrape chocolate off the floor, and I will see you guys at the same time next week. Until then, happy caking.